Senator Rand Paul yesterday accusing Democrats of being hypocrites for supporting war under President Obama while opposing military action under President Bush. Let's talk about it now with Judith Miller, a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter, author, and Fox News contributor. Tammy Bruce is also with us, radio talk show host and a Fox News contributor. What about it, Tammy? There are accusations that the media, putting still photos of the unfortunate journalists just before they were beheaded on the front pages, that the media are driving an attack on ISIL, which maybe does not need to take place. What do you think?
Well, look, I mean, that's news. What's happening in the world is news. Americans should know about it. And what Senator Paul is doing is what part of the problem that President Barack Obama is doing, in that they are referring back to the past of a situation that was entirely unique and a dynamic that was different. This is now. This is a different situation. This is a dynamic that is created out of Syria, the meltdown of the Syrian dynamic, ISIS coming out of that. And this is what's so very strange, is the need to attach a political framework to the choices we make. At the same time, the media in some ways is covering certainly some very basic news like the beheadings, but they're not really covering things like the murder of Brendan Tevlin out of New Jersey by a man, a self-declared jihadist. Some headlines out of Australia with their roundup of jihadists, people sympathetic to ISIS, declaring that they were going to behead somebody in public. So the rhetoric that comes out of ISIS with their propaganda is in fact worldwide. It's international. It's not about ISIS coming over here, and parachuting into Miami. It's about the impact they're having using social media.
Tom Friedman wrote in the New York Times, Judy, that ISIS is a threat, or ISIS is awful, he says, but it is not a threat to America's homeland.
Well, I think that's right for the moment, and that's the issue. For the moment. I mean, I've just come from Israel, and believe me, the Israelis are not worried about ISIS, but they are worried about groups like ISIS, such as Hamas, with whom they've just fought a 50-day war. We should be worried also not just about ISIS, but about Jabhat al-Nusra, which is the other group in Syria that the president hasn't spoken of, but they are the al-Qaeda affiliate there. So I think journalists are raising questions correctly, John, about whether or not we should be questioning the, quote, strategy such as it is. Who do we want to eliminate? If we get rid of ISIS, do we help Jabhat al-Nusra take over the country? Do we help Assad solidify his control of the country? Those are both bad outcomes of what could be the president's strategy. But because the president doesn't like to use the W word, and I'm not talking about George here, I'm talking about war, we're arguing about whether or not we're at war, whether or not we should take boots on the ground. That's not the issue. Does this strategy make sense? That's the issue.
Tammy, some of the problem, I think, is the president's pronouncements to the media and the way his approach to the problem has changed, back from in January describing ISIS in that New Yorker interview as, a JV squad, and then in a primetime address announcing that he's going to destroy them because they are, evil and a threat.
Well, see, this is the problem to some degree with the media, is that they're moving in a day-to-day basis, and perhaps for them, like for Senator Paul, this is some kind of a rush to war. But we now know that, in fact, the administration was aware of and discussing the problem with ISIS for years. We know at least certainly since January when they took over Fallujah. So I'm not quite sure where the rush is. We've also been giving, with the president's pronouncements, warnings to ISIS effectively, as they are now moving their equipment from known locations. They're moving their weapons depots. They're moving themselves. They're moving their headquarters. So we're seeing a lot of a change happening when it comes to ISIS realizing that we apparently are going to be taking our time in dealing with certain things. We finally have a French strike, which is helpful, but ISIS has been able to move because of this being handled as a news event, as a news cycle event versus a governmental event.
Even the number of airstrikes, when the president got involved and started targeting ISIS in Iraq, Judy, 124 airstrikes so far, that's not a huge number.
No, it's not, and there are no plans, it seems, to move more aircraft carriers into the region or to enlarge the capacity of America to strike. But here's the problem. Whom are you bombing? I mean, if you bomb the Sunni villagers who are supporting ISIS, you're going to drive them closer to this extremist group. So you have to have really good intelligence on the ground. That means putting together the coalition that the president president has slowly been putting together. It's tough going. I mean, I was over there and the Turks just said, no, we're not going to help because we've got hostages. Hello? We have hostages. They have a long border with ISIS. How do you defeat them if they can keep going back and forth? Yeah. There are just so many questions here that I want to hear the media asking.
All right. Very good. Judy Miller, Tammy Bruce, thank you both.
Thank you.